This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show number 270, the September 22nd, 2017 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker after a fun weekend last weekend in Toronto, up north of the border there for the super duper fun Woodbine Mile Day. We're going to be talking about everything that went down last weekend. We've got one of my favorite pieces of listener mail ever we're going to be getting to, and then we'll be talking about an array of races coming up this weekend, including the Pennsylvania Derby, the Cotillion, the Gallant Bob, the Kelso from Belmont. Maybe we'll even do a little bonus coverage of the Oklahoma Derby running as part of a stakes-laden card at Remington Park on Sunday. Get your 2 TV setup going on Sunday, NFL on one, Remington on, and various other racetracks of your choice on the other. Should be a lot of fun. Joining me, as always, on today's show, I believe he got the jet back up in the air finally, so from an undisclosed location somewhere in these here United States of America, it's the People's Champion, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
We got a tweet that there's a horse named the People's Champ that is in on Saturday, I believe, at Parx. So that's a hunch play for you guys out there. Let's see if we can't get that guy home. I wish I could be in the winner's circle picture for that one. 20 to 1 morning line, so I'm not sure how likely it is to get into the winner's circle, but we'll be rooting nonetheless.
The morning line may be 20 to 1, but I have bad news for you, JK. It's 1 to 20 that the People's Champ is named after Dwayne Johnson, as opposed to Jonathan Kinchin. But still, we can have a little bit of fun with it and root the People's Champ home. Cool card at Parx on Saturday. Is that where a lot of your focus will be this weekend?
Yeah, my out of the gate play was the pick 3 leading into the Pennsylvania Derby, so I'll be paying attention for sure. And then what else? I guess Belmont's got one of my favorite stakes races. One of my favorite races of all time was Uncle Mo winning the Kelso when Jackson Ben kind of ran out. I wanted Tom Durkin's. We all kind of have our favorite Tom Durkin calls that everyone likes. And then everyone has their own little kind of precious one, and that's my little precious one when when Uncle Mo won and he said he's back.
It's so funny, Durkin. People have such an amazing array of opinions as to what the best call is, but we got a window into Durkin himself when he did that really cool panel at Equestricon, and each race caller got to pick their favorite call to do. And, I thought it was 1 to 5 that it's going to be Tisnow wins it for America, that call we're talking about on our September 11th show. And it turns out, of course, he goes with the pirate one. Good old.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I actually went to that panel, and Travis did his derby, his first derby call. Larry obviously did the Triple Crown. Dave Rodman did the race where a Fleet Alex almost went to his nose.
Freakness.
Yeah, exactly. And then Durkin does the R. It was very funny. Definitely
a window into his personality. Not a guy who takes himself too seriously. We got to get him on the show. I meant to try to do it this summer, coordinating with some of the cool stuff he was doing at the Racing Museum, but it's never too late. I say that out loud to put a little bit of pressure on myself to actually get it done and get a chat with Tom Durkin at some point, and hopefully we won't wait till next Saratoga to go ahead and get it done. Let's talk about the races from Woodbine Mile Day. Then we'll do a little quick hitter on the contest. I have a profile of the winner, Ali T. Aksoy, going up on DRF.com pretty much any minute now. Great story there. But let's talk about the racing first and then back ourselves into the contest piece of the equation. World Approval sure looks like a major contender for the Woodbine Mile, for the Breeders' Cup Mile, after a fairly impressive performance in the Woodbine Mile. What did you think of the race, JK?
I thought he was good. I mean, he was on the inside. Our friend Mike Maloney actually told me before Woodbine he expected the inside to be good. We didn't talk about why he expected the inside to be good.
Rails were down.
But he just thought the inside of the turf course was going to be where you wanted to be. World Approval was there. However, it didn't, he wasn't out there just, gallivanting around. He was running a little bit. I think they went 46 to the half, and he finished well. I think one of the coolest things about that horse is that he'll act on any surface. He'll act on a firm surface. He'll act around one turn. He'll act around two turns. He'll act when there's some give in the ground, and that's always an encouraging thing to see from a horse when they're versatile like that. The only thing I wish would have been different is I love John Velasquez, and good for him, but I've been a flag bearer for the Manny Franco fan club. I wish he would have been able to keep them out and get that Grade 1 win, but I'm sure it'll even out in the long run.
I was going to say, I mean, the good thing about it, I agree, it would have been nice to see Manny keep that mount, but I am sympathetic to the point of view to some degree that when you can get Johnny, you get Johnny. But I would say this about that. Let's just hope the trajectory keeps going as it is for Manny. Lots more Grade 1 wins coming up in the future for him. If everything goes according to the trajectory that things are currently on. Very interesting horse, World Approval. I mean, how old is he now? 7? And he's only really just becoming like a serious miler in the last 2 starts. He's running longer. He's doing all these different things. Seems like he's finally really found a home now. How serious of a contender? And I'll look up the prices as we chat, JK. But how serious are you looking at him for the Breeders' Cup Mile?
Well, I think anytime we have something special in that category, it's always a question of what's going to show up here, right? I mean, Wise Dan obviously was one that could withstand the Euro test, and Tepin as well. It's yet to be determined if World Approval is that class when the good ones come over and show up. One thing I'll say about him is he is tenacious, and I've even heard that around the barn. I've heard you better watch out. You better take a couple steps away from his stall when you walk by, because he will nip you. So he's a tenacious type, and I thought he ran well, and he's run well, and he ran well at Saratoga as well. So I saw a quote that Mark Casse said that he's an athletic horse, and he doesn't think that he'll have a problem with the tight turns at Del Mar, which is definitely true. The turns at Del Mar are really tight. I've heard a lot of people describe that course as kind of a paperclip. If you imagine what a paperclip kind of looks like, it's really long and then the quick little turns. So I would imagine he'll be fine, but I think he's definitely one to pay attention to. But I want to see what they send over.
It is kind of the opposite of the galloping mile at Woodbine, that's for sure. Currently, we've got 6 horses only at 10 to 1 or less, and some of them would be shocking. Well, at least Winter is listed among the entries right now at 10 to 1. I'd be kind of surprised if we see her. Ribchester, the obvious favorite, at 4 to 1. The trick with Ribchester is we're back to a situation like in 2015 where Champions Day at Ascot is only 2 weeks ahead of the Breeders' Cup. So that might put his participation in doubt.
I read somewhere that the plan is Champions Day, Breeders' Cup back in 2 weeks. He's a horse that likes his racing, I believe was the quote. And that's the plan. Unless something goes wrong, they're planning on doing the quick turnaround already.
That's interesting. Well, 4 to 1. I love it that it would be the plan and not an afterthought. I'll say that much. And 4 to 1 might end up being a gift if you could get that non-runner no bet, which I don't think you could over there yet. I think this is just the price if he doesn't run. Tough luck, which makes it a lot less interesting. But if you could get 4's non-runner no bet, I would like that very much. The form that he showed, as impressive as he was last time in France. World Approval listed in the betting right now at 7. Decorated Knight at 8. And then the others listed at 10, Winter, who I mentioned. Interestingly, Good Samaritan listed in the betting at 10. And also our old pal, friend of the podcast, Yoshida, listed at 10 right now. So we'll see. Obviously, very early days. These are just probably 1 or 2 shops that are posting prices. You probably couldn't even get a decent bet down at any of these numbers, but it is just one interesting little barometer of what's going on in the marketplace and something fun to follow. I got that information off oddschecker.com if folks are interested. Okay, so you talk about the Euros coming over. I could make an argument, and tell me if I'm crazy, but I could make an argument that Lancaster Bomber was pretty much, I'm not saying he was going to win the race, but that he was pretty much just as good as World Approval, given that I felt it did matter being wide on the turns on that day. on the turf course and just the difference of trips. I kind of feel like you trade trips, you might even trade the result. Am I being too harsh to World Approval or too optimistic about Lancaster Bomber in that assessment?
No, I think it's fair. And I think talking about Lancaster Bomber, I think this is where you're going with it as a potential Breeders' Cup Mile type. As many times as he's gotten his passport stamp to come over to the U.S., you would think that Aidan O'Brien and the team believe that the racing here suits him well, and would target that as kind of his next opportunity to get back over here. And I think he's definitely one that I'd be interested in. Obviously I want to look at the figure from that race and see how it came back. I'm not sure what World Approval got, but just to kind of see where it stacks up. But he's definitely one that I would take a look at off of that trip. I'm not sure if he'll run again before then, but he's definitely one that I would be interested in.
Yeah, I guess he'd be a potential candidate to run between. But I think at this point, with the success that he's had over here, it seems to me, if I were the one pulling the strings, making the decisions, I think I'd just go ahead and maybe point to the Breeders' Cup at this point. But you never know. It's obviously different training methods in different parts of the world, and that might mean that we do get to see him out on a race course again. But certainly he likes the rattling firm ground. Certainly he can handle running around tight turns, and therefore current price, what was it? I just had it here and then I clicked off it. 20-1. That sounds pretty darn good to me at the moment. Again, if that were non-runner, no bet, it would be a lot more appealing. You mentioned about the figures, JK, a 108 for World Approval in that spot, 102 for Lancaster Bomber, Long on Value, and Monde Elise, who all sort of finished in that tight pack a few lengths back. What did you make of Long on Value's performance? I mean, is this a situation where he's now going to cut back and sprint again? Is Mott going to keep him at the mile? He's a bit of a hard horse. I can't really get my mind around Long on Value at this point.
Well, I think we'll have to wait. I read in the pages, the web pages of DRF, that he is not nominated for the Breeders' Cup, so he will not be pointed to the Breeders' Cup. So I know that wasn't your question directly, but I guess we won't find out then. I would imagine that off of that performance, they'll probably try to get him another graded stakes win going longer on the dirt. On the turf. They kind of already know that he'll turf sprint. I think they're kind of trying to find out if he'll turf route against graded stakes company. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, certainly, and he's in the right hands. But just a horse, sometimes you have theories about horses and you get to watch them be born out on the racetrack. And with that horse, if anything, I thought when they cut him back the first time, finally, this is what he wants to do. And now I don't know once again. We'll have to see what happens with him. Let's talk for a minute about the Northern Dancer. Now, folks listening carefully and betting along with your A's, B's, and C's given out on the podcast, JK, would have had Johnny Bear, according to a listener I heard from, and I didn't even really quite remember this, but you'd given out Johnny Bear as a C, so that must be Christmas in July. How many times did you have this cross-continental pick 5?
I see what you're doing here, Pete. I see what you're doing here. I did not have him. What
happened? What went wrong?
I don't know. When I was ticket building, I was just like, you know what? Look, this horse is going to win for fun. Like, yes, those other horses, yeah, exactly. Those other horses could get involved, but I'm gonna put all my eggs in one basket, and apparently it was the wrong basket.
Yeah, well, it was a very, very tight and tough photo. I know at the expense of at the risk of sounding harsh, I did think this was a perfect example, JK, of this conversation we've had before on the show about efficient rides versus inefficient rides in turf races. And Colm O'Donoghue, to me, didn't necessarily use Hawkbill's greatest advantage. I'll let you speak to this subject, and then I'll fill in any blanks.
Yeah, no, I actually think it's probably the poster child for that conversation. We see it happen so often. You cannot allow horses with stamina and horses with good late kick into races where you have a tactical advantage being forwardly placed. And so that's what Hawkbill had. Hawkbill was supposed to be loose on the lead. He was loose on the lead, but he was going 50. We went 51 or whatever it was to the half. If you go 51 to the half, then you're allowing all of those closers to be close to you, and then it's a sprint for home. If you just go 49 to the half, you now are opened up by 4 or 5. You're in control. You're making them run faster than they want to run. You dull their late kick, and you get them off the bridle because they got a lot farther to come to catch you. It kind of guts them a little bit, takes a little bit of their tenacity away from them. And it also puts pressure on a rider of a closer. When do I move? So you open up an opportunity for a mistake to be had by a rider behind you, but instead you go 51 to the half, you let them sit around there like it's a workout, and we'll just sprint home and see who wins, and that never seems to work out.
Just to give you the illustration, here are the fractions, looking at the incremental pace in the formulator charts feature. And I'll just read you Hawkbill splits. 26.09 for the quarter, followed by 24.85, 48.87, 23.35, and then slowing down at the finish, actually, 24.16. And here's my theory about a horse like Hawkbill. This is a horse who could basically, in my opinion, run 24 and change and just not stop, and probably go to 2 miles doing fractions like that. What he doesn't have is any kind of turn of foot. So if you get in sort of a turn of foot battle in the stretch, which is exactly what happened by going so slow early, you run the risk of getting out quickened. And it was interesting because I watched this race with my naked eye out there right outside the 10 at Woodbine, and in front of me, a little more, gosh, I don't know how far away from the finish I probably was, like a furlong and a half, you could see the momentum and the quickness that Johnny Bear had, and it was so much more than Hawkbill. In front of me, like, this race was over, Johnny Bear's going to win by 2. And Muggs, the handicapping Labrador, clearly agrees. And what happened from there is Hawkbill, with so much stamina and fight and class, ends up fighting back, and you saw what the margin was at the end. I mean, it was I think it was officially a head, but it was a head that was almost a nose. I just think that in efficiency terms, we've talked about the Paul Matisse, how he visually pictures the pace in a race as like a line, and they were so far down below that line that it took away Hawkbill as an individual's ability to run that distance as fast as he was capable of. And all you need to see, to me, to as illustration of that point, is to see him get past, coming back at the line, and then gallop out best. Like, this was a horse that clearly hadn't used his maximum energy, and it was because he wasn't able to do it efficiently. Anyway, that's probably enough on that, unless you have anything else to add about that one, JK.
No, that's right on time.
Okay, excellent. And then we might as well at least talk quickly about the Canadian. What did you think of Kidura getting it done at 2-5?
I thought she was impressive. It was a little bit desperate, but it's kind of the same thing. Like, it just happened to work out this time. Went a little bit slower than I think that you would prefer. Well, not prefer, but I think that I would prefer. Maybe not you. Maybe not maybe other people prefer them to go a little bit slower. But yeah, I thought she was good. But the thing is when you have a horse like that who's 1-5, who wins by, a desperate half a length, it's really not that encouraging. She was supposed to win like that, wasn't she? But you got to give horses credit when they show up, when they're supposed to show up. So is she beating Lady Eli anytime soon? No, I don't think so. Is she going to take my money in the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf? No, I don't think so. But a nice horse nonetheless, and a nice performance.
She got it done. 100 by her speed figure there. I should have mentioned the Johnny Bear figure, which I think was considerably lower than that. 97. They both got 97s, Hawkbill and Johnny Bear. Yeah, Hawkbill should be getting a bigger figure than that. Anyway, we talked enough about that. But yeah, Kidura with the 100, I agree with everything you said. Not a threat to the tops of the division, but a well-chosen spot. And Alicia's world, getting to see her show something approximating her good form again. Official margin of victory was a length, but I agree with you in my memory, thinking of the race, JK. It was a bit closer than that, a bit more dramatic than that, anyway. Alicia's Kidura, key to the contest, Ali Aksoy, showing his understanding that the contest environment is different than real life, and realizing that the points you earn in a contest are essentially worth more because you're playing for the prize pool. He actually went all in on her, JK, partially in doubles, and then he just went ahead and took the 40 cents on the dollar and bet the remainder of his bankroll to win. What do you think of that play?
I love it. You know me. I've got nicknames, derogatory nicknames about chalk. Who actually told me that the other day? Where was I at when someone said? Oh, I'll remember in a second. Someone came up to me and said, geez, I'm going blank on what it was. Where was I at?
Chalk eating weasel. What do we?
Someone said chalk eating weasel. Someone said, so and so said you're a chalk eating weasel, but they didn't know what that was. Oh, when I was filming for a Win Play show, Jason Avila told one of the producers that I was a chalk eating or chalk sucking weasel, and she kind of came up and she's like, I thought you and Jason were friends. I was like, we are friends. She's like, well, he just called you a weasel or a joke. I said, no, a chalk sucking weasel, and then I explained to her what it was. Anyway, I love that. That's kind of the way I like to play. I would rather be aggressive on a horse who's going to win 30% of the time than chase horses that lose 60% of the time.
Now, consider the fact, when you're saying that, are you considering the fact of a contest environment as opposed to a cash environment, at least in part?
I mean, it's everywhere, but I mean, in tournament environments, no one's betting that horse except for him and
exactly.
me. So there's something to that.
Yes.
I don't usually fall too deep in that game theory. However, like if the tournament was over and I won and you interviewed me and you were like, did that have something to do with it? I'd be like, oh yeah, I thought about it. I mean, I would piggyback the idea, but it's not something that actually, is always in my mind.
And it doesn't need to necessarily be in your mind, but it's an advantage nonetheless. When you're using strategies that other people aren't using, you're going to move up. You're going to move up by yourself. Now, live bank is obviously different than Mythical Money Tournament, where moving up by yourself, it's harder to have those opportunities to move up by yourself in Mythical Money Tournaments, and therefore it's even more valuable. But I thought it was extremely clever. And then he came back, and his other big play was World Approval. And they have the rule at Woodbine, like at Keeneland, where you have to bet half your bankroll in one of the last two races. So he got kind of cheeky and spread it around a little bit. Not Win Play Show contestant spread it around, but still he had like Win Show on World Approval, and then he had the 3 European invaders basically just to cover his bet, which I thought was smart, because he was expressing an opinion, and he ended up getting paid pretty nice with World Approval winning, but there were a lot of outcomes where he wouldn't have gone busto in the contest. I thought that was rather clever. Then in the last race, he had a $400 lead, and funny enough, he asked me, he asked a couple people, but I was among them, what his strategy should be, and I'm proud to say, I'm not saying he did it because of what I said, but he basically did what I said. My advice to him was, he'd made all his minimums, so he was considering sitting and just letting other people pass him, thinking that the way the prize structure was, there were something like 14 players with $1,000 at that point. He was thinking people wouldn't be that aggressive. But my advice to him was, you've got to move the goalposts at least a little bit. I was just afraid if you just sat on that target number, that definitely somebody would have at least hit that target number, and even moving 600 ahead would help out. He ended up actually, before I tell you what he did, what do you do? What do you do in that spot? You don't have a strong opinion. You're up 400 going into the last.
The quick answer is I bet 395.
That's basically what he did. Yeah, that's basically what he did. He made
it's bad, but it got me beat. It got me beat at Keeneland.
what happened to Keelan? Remind me.
If I would have not bet, I mean, I did that. I bet like $5 less than whatever. If I wouldn't have bet that, I would have won.
Sitting,
but
you would have won.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Well, funny enough, he bets the 3. This is the opposite story. It just shows how much randomness. You can't say, "Oh, I did it. It was the right decision because of this outcome." You got to focus on the decision-making process, not the outcome. This is the flip side of the coin. He bet, he hit, he moved up, and had he sat, Chris Littlemore would have passed him, who also had made a conservative bet. He was in second going into the race. He would have passed him. So it worked out perfectly in this case. Of course, I'm sure in your story too, JK, you didn't hit that bet, right?
No, I ran. It was the one where I ran third by the nastiest of nostrils. And if I would have run, I'm sorry, I ran fourth by the nastiest of nostrils. If I ran third, I would have added another $3,000 to my score. And it so happens that the horse that nosed me out of the photo was the one that he had that put him ahead of me. So
Blaze Brucato, that's right. That was when Blaze Brucato won the 2 tournaments in a weekend. Well, Ali Aksoy, the most recent big winner in the tournament world, very well deserved. This is a guy who had a bunch of top 10 finishes and had been in first a bunch of times with one race to go and kept getting nailed. You can read all about that coming up in the pages of Daily Racing Form. We've got a lot of ground to cover, JK, and not all that much time to do it on this show. So I'm going to turn the conversation to some tournament-related announcements. 2 big things coming up in the world of tournaments. One we haven't sort of officially written about yet, so I'm just going to kind of tease it. But we're going to have our first international contest coming up on DRF Tournaments in the next few weeks. And it's going to concern Australian racing. And the prize is actually going to be a trip to Australia, and it's going to be a free roll. It's amazing. So we're going to get all the details on that sorted out this week. I'll be writing an article probably Thursday. But this is something that every single person listening to this show should be participating in, even if you take a page out of, speaking of Australians, Hurricane Anthony's book and just play all the ones. There's no reason not to take a free shot for a trip to Australia. Details coming this week. And also coming this week, 1 week from today actually, we are going to be doing a special broadcast. We'll still be doing the pod as normal, but then later in the afternoon, we're going to be doing, as part of the DRF Live productions, a broadcast, sort of a hybrid of a podcast and a DRF Live hit that's also going to have a contest involved. JK, give the people the details.
We're talking about Friday, right?
Correct.
Yes, so we're going to do kind of a live broadcast where Pete and I are going to kind of be doing the podcast along with the tournament. If there's a little special edge to it, we haven't worked out the full details, but it'll be official in no time with the writing up of the rules. But there's a little bit of a beat JK bonus.
Outplay JK bonus.
Outplay JK.
Yeah,
got it. Outplay JK. Outplay JK. It rhymes. I'm going to be playing in the tournament. If you finish better than me, then you're going to get an equivalent entry back for what the entry fee is for the tournament.
So you play for free, essentially, if you can outplay JK. That's the bonus. The tournament itself is going to be, I believe, $25 entry fee. 1 in 10 will feed into the last chance qualifier for Santa Anita. So this is going to be a great opportunity for folks looking to qualify for Santa Anita. We're always talking about what a great experience it is to play out there, and why pay for your entry when you can win one, especially with a chance that if you finish ahead of this guy, you end up with a free roll. I'm expecting, hopefully we'll get that up on DRF Tournaments site early next week. Tournaments.drf.com will be a special event for Friday, last chance feeder for Santa Anita. The other cool thing about it is it's going to be a low money chance to utilize our live format, which is something I've been advocating for a long time on DRF Tournaments. So you have a chance to play in a live contest for a very small buy-in, $25. Follow along with us during the broadcast. We're going to have a ton of fun. It's going to be a special just 6-race contest on Friday afternoon. It'll probably run from 4:30 to 6 or 4 to 5:30. We don't want to make it the longest thing in the world, but just a chance to have fun, get some new people looking at the DRF Tournaments platform, and give the listeners an excellent chance to get involved or get further involved in contest play. All right, let's move on to our listener question. I teased this earlier. My favorite betting question I think we've ever received. This one comes in from Matt. I'm just going to read the whole email, JK, and then I'm going to let you take it and comment on it. And I think we can riff on this for a while, and then we should still have a chance we'll talk about these races quickly. We'll get to everything. Okay, Pete and JK. I've been kicking around an idea with my friends, partially in jest, but it's created enough excitement that I thought I'd share the situation with you guys in case you care to weigh in. Do we care to weigh in? Of course we care to weigh in. I'm fortunate to be in a situation where I'd like to get down on one knee in the next few months. My girlfriend and I have gone as far as looking at some initial options, and while I still have plenty of searching and haggling to do, I've come to terms with the fact that a 5-digit purchase is in my near future. Knowing that my sick mind went to this question, could I try to subsidize part or all of the purchase through some strategic horse playing? And if so, what would that look like? My logic is that if I'm going to spend a significant amount on a purchase, why not risk a few $100s to try to make a big dent in the ring fund? Worst case scenario, and most likely scenario, I lose the money and it's like paying a few percentage points more for the rock. Does this make any sense, or do I need to reevaluate my decision making? It's similar when I went to the Derby for a bachelor party and spent $2,000 for flights, tickets, lodging, etc. In that context, betting my usual 20 per race didn't make a lot of sense to me. If you guys can follow my twisted logic, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how to take my best shot at subsidizing the ring. Would it be via multis, like a pick 5 with a 15% takeout? Would it be by taking one shot on the nose with a 15 or 20 to 1 shot? Should I wait for a big carryover day? As context, I'm a weekend warrior type of player who likes to follow the graded stakes races, but I don't play any one circuit aggressively. Thanks for humoring me, Matt. JK, let's start off with the basic question. First of all, is this a good idea?
I mean, look, it's a good idea if you so let's just say that the 5 digits is $10,000. If you have the $10,000 and you definitely have $11,000, then sure, bet $1,000, bet 10%, and try to make something cool happen, have a good story. If you got $8,000 and you're trying to get to $12,000, then no, I don't think that that's very smart. So that's the first part of it. It's fun, it's interesting. Here's what I would do. I would not do the $500 on a 20 to 1 shot. I don't. You're going to lose that. The odds say you're going to lose that. What I would do is if let's say we're doing 10,000, you're going to spend 1,000. I would play the pick 6 on Breeders' Cup Day. That's what I would wait for. I would wait for that. If you don't, for whatever reason, if you don't really love the first 2 legs, then I guess you could kind of change your attention to the pick 4. But that's what I would do. I would play a multi-race bet on a big day with horses that we know everything about, that we can find every story about, that we know their intentions. There's no preps. There's no nothing. There's horses that are trying to win Breeders' Cup trophies. And I feel like those days, big days, are the best days to be able to identify value options because you're not guessing. A lot of times during the week, you see value you're guessing. Oh, well, this horse is 20 to 1, but it's first time for so-and-so and off the claim, and they're adding blinkers. So I think this horse could run well here at 20 to 1. But on Breeders' Cup Day, it's your 20 to 1 shots are horses that you've seen their performances against high-level horses, and you have reasons to why they didn't show up today. You know why the favorites aren't going to run well today, and you can kind of get yourself into a better situation. So that's what I would do if I was doing this. I was looking for one big opportunity, then I would look for Breeders' Cup Day with those large pools.
I love your idea of Breeders' Cup Day. I hate your idea of the pick 6. I just feel like for a Breeders' Cup Day pick 6 going in, let's say he's budgeting $1,000, I just think you're sure to be undercapitalized between the $2 minimum and all the other, just the fact that it's even with a low minimum, the fact that you have to hit to be right 6 times to me, especially if if you're just really looking also to subsidize your purchase, I just think that's making your life a little too difficult. How I would amend what you said, Jonathan, and tell me if you think I have something or if you were right in the first place, is find your strongest opinion on Breeders' Cup Day and build around that wherever it is. And maybe it is the pick six. Maybe you've got 4 races that really narrow down. But I'm thinking it's more likely a pick 4 where you can get more coverage and still really good value, or even a pick 3 on a day like that. If you've got a couple of races with strong opinions that are next to each other, and just like lay into those combos and just try to, I think for the same reason, I agree with you about why you sort of poo-pooed the idea of the 15-1 shot, 20-1 shot. Your strike rate's going to be so low on that bet. I think in a similar way, your strike rate's going to be a lot lower betting 1,000 into a pick 6 than it could be on choosing a different gimmick on the day. Fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's 100% fair. The only worry is that playing a double or a pick 3 or even a pick 4, if you get a little too spready, there's a chance that you're not going to pay for the ring. And I think that if you're gonna make this bet in order to pay for the ring, I think you want to have an opportunity that the ring is paid for. Like if you hit this bet, the ring is free. And I think that's kind of what drew me to the pick 6.
I get that, but I think on a Breeders' Cup Day in the pick 4 pool, I'm still going to advocate for the pick 4 pool, and I'm going to say, hey, you're going to have to bet this efficiently. If you're going to have favorites in there, you're going to need to weight them more than your 20 and 30-1 shots. But I'm thinking, you can still get 10-1 on your 1,000 in the pick 4 pool, and because of the lower minimum, you're going to be able to bet it way more efficiently. I just feel like taking that amount of money to the pick 6 pool on Breeders' Cup Day, unless you just have handicapped, unless you're just so confident in your handicapping and so narrowed down in 3 of the races, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight, aren't you?
Well, you only need 2 horses in the last race.
Well, that's probably true. We've got one narrowed down.
Yeah, I mean, you only need 2 there.
Unless my man Churchill shows up in there and wins at 50-1.
Yeah, you only need 2 there. Let's see. Let's just work backwards real quick and see if we can find another single. The Breeders' Cup Turf. We don't have a single there, do we? No.
We need to know who's coming for sure for that one.
Yeah. So in the mile, there's no there's no single.
If Ribchester shows.
The sprint, you can single Ransom the Moon.
Oh, it's also a question of who. Right, I'm thinking of all the races. We got to think of just the ones we know who are going to be in there. Yeah, your wise guy pick. Well, let's bring this up again, and maybe we'll hear back from Matt. Hopefully, he'll.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we make a note? And I think we agree that Breeders' Cup Day is the way to do it. So we'll call it the ring bet. I'll set my alarm right now. I'll tell Siri to remind me. And on the podcast before the Breeders' Cup, I'll give out my $1,000 ring bet.
That's great. I love it. I absolutely love this idea. We'll be ring betting at the Breeders' Cup. That'll be a ton of fun. The points about carryover and takeout that he raised, if you're a horse player playing every day, not even every day, if you're playing all the time, if you're playing on any regular basis, looking at your takeout and your effective takeout, incredibly important. It affects horse players who play, even if they don't know it's affecting them. However, for this specific situation, I think that having a carryover, having a lower takeout environment is less important. This, to me, is all about finding one opportunity and getting it right. The more you try to grind just parimutually, the trickier of a situation it's going to be, because takeout is going to eat you alive. So, but I think for this thought experiment, the way to minimize the effect of takeout is to take the one swing that we're talking about on Breeders' Cup Day. And there, if you're taking one swing, the difference between 15% and 25% even, for one individual bet with this goal in mind, I don't think it's too relevant. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, agree. It's a long-term problem.
Yeah. So, and then one other thing I want to touch on. What about that idea when you take an expensive racing trip? I'd argue against a little bit what he said about taking the trip to the Derby and spending thousands for the weekend, and all of a sudden betting 20 didn't seem appropriate to him. I would argue that, like, just in life, your travel and fun budgets are different enough than your gambling budget that I'd have no problem spending a lot of money to go someplace and still betting what I normally bet. In fact, I'd probably recommend that. Just for your I get the ring. It's a special situation, kind of a fun thing we're talking about. If you've got the money, why not? But what about you, JK? If you're traveling and spending a lot of money for something, is that going to change the way you bet in any way, shape, or form?
No, my betting's going to change the way I spend. Robert
Explain
and
what you mean by that.
Yeah. Robert and I always used to joke oh, how much is that hotel? $800, dude. That's pick four money. Let's find one for $400. And so the first two times we went to the Derby, the first time we went to the Derby, we stayed in an extended stay, like one of those kind of shady, extended stays deal, like $179 weekly type of deals. We stayed there in Louisville because we felt like that was the cheapest hotel we could find, and we used the other money on betting. So, all jokes aside, I think that's probably the best way to do it. You've talked about this before, kind of having separate accounts, an account for betting, an account for life, and not really letting them affect one another. So, I get it, but you spend $2,000 on the Derby, then you show up to the Derby and you bet more than you do, and you turn your $2,000 trip into a $5,000 trip, and then when you get home, you're not feeling so good about yourself. So I wouldn't change too much. Enjoy the experience and just kind of stay in your betting comfort zone.
Speaking of the Derby, I've started this week, Jonathan, putting aside money. I say we do this. I talked about trying to get on your and Robert's situation, talking about bringing my daughter, bringing my mom. I say we do it. Are you're down again?
I'm in until I die. So,
well, I hope you and Robert don't mind me horning in on your situation this year. It's going to be the place is going to be filthy with Fornitels.
Let's do it.
All right, excellent. Let's move on and talk about some of these races this weekend. Let's start with the goings-on at Philly Park. You said you did a pick 3 for your out of the gate video. I don't want to. It's hard because on one level I don't particularly want to give away everything you say there, but on another level you have so much more time to go in depth here. But so I guess we'll say it like this: if you want the quick version, check out JK on Out of the Gate, which you should be watching anyway because it's a great weekend preview show. But why don't we take a few minutes now and go a little bit deeper into the thought process? I assume this is the pick 3 that starts off with the Gallant Bob?
It is, yeah. I use 3 horses here. Two of them that I'm particularly interested in. One of them I got for free, and the other one is a little bit of a saver. So the one that I'm particularly interested in is American Pastime for Bob Hess, who ran a huge time form number. Not a huge, a big time form number, 126 at Del Mar in that allowance race and did it like a good thing. I love Kent when he's on, and I love him in big spots like this. And I think American Pastime showing up here and what appears to be a little bit easier of a spot than some of these are coming out of with the King's Bishop, Alan Jerkins, the H. Alan Jerkins. So I think American Pastime is very live here. He's the type of horse I would probably use in tournaments. He's also one of the horses I'm using in my pick 3. Cold Front is one that I've been against, but I thought he ran really well last time in the race with Practical Joke. Was wide all the way around there. Not 100% sure that's where you wanted to be. He shows up here.
Definitely not where you wanted to be.
Ran a good number that day. You're going to get Petrov for free. Not really for free, but you get Petrov as well, who I think is another live type of horse. I don't know who's going to ride. Jose Ortiz is named, so not that it makes a ton of difference, but I think that he's also kind of a nice one to have on in that entry. And then Excitations, the 7, I thought was one that I would take a look at, who ran well against Cold Front last time. I think maybe last time was the time you really wanted him. However, he did kind of close into a situation, a track that was favoring horses on the front end. And so I think that he still could be one that could run well in this spot. So for me in this spot, it was going to be the 1, the 5, and the 7, with the 5 being my main pick and the pick that I would use in like a tournament setting.
So how would you weight in terms of your combinations, percentage of bankroll? How would you allocate the funds with the 1 entry going to be much shorter than either the 5 or the 7, I would imagine?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last time with kind of the workaround of using numerous ticket maker kind of applications. So what I would do here is I'd probably do two to start it off. And the reason I would do that is because although American Pastime is my top choice, in Cold Front, you're right, the entry is going to be over bet. I want to probably use those horses equally, right? Because those entries equally, those two numbers, the 1 and the 5 equally. The 5 because it's my top pick, but the 1 because the 1 is going to be bet so heavily that you're going to probably want it a little bit more. So even though the 5 would be my top selection in a normal setting, I would probably bet more on the 5. I'm okay with betting a little bit more on the 1 so that the 1's value can kind of be found in the way that I'm betting it. And then the lower denomination would be the 7. I would probably bet this, probably 80% on the 1-5 and 20% on the 7.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I love the way you describe that. Let's move on to the cotillion. Boy, I started looking at this race, JK, and I just really, really, really wanted to beat Abel Tasman, breaking from outside. Seemed like maybe a day where she'd be vulnerable, but I was having trouble focusing with a whole lot of strength on the horse I thought could win. Gun to my head, I might select number 5, It Tis Well here, but it's a tricky race, and I don't know that you can oppose Abel Tasman with the amount of enthusiasm that I was initially planning after doing a little bit more work on the race. Where did you end up in here?
I used 3 horses. I used the 5, It Is Well, It Tis Well, the 9, Abel Tasman, and the 10, Salty. This is a tough race. I guess one of these other horses could win. I don't really want Lockdown. I don't really want Actress. And then all the horses that are 20 and 20 to 1 and then the Rapoli entry don't really get me going. Here's the problem with Abel Tasman. I thought it was a negative that the horse didn't show up for the Alabama. Baffert's really big on let me watch him work and then I'll make a decision. The horse clearly didn't work well enough for Baffert to put her on a plane again. And so that's not really encouraging. Also, I've always thought that she's going to be better going long, or 1.125 miles, 1.25. And now she's cutting back to 1.16 miles. And on top of that, I don't really see how she doesn't lose. Okay, she might not lose ground into the first turn, but she's going to have to lose ground into the second turn circling horses. So there's a chance of her losing ground on both turns at a distance that I think is a little bit shorter than what she wants. And that's not ideal for a horse who's going to be even money. With that said, she's the best horse in this field, and she makes me really nervous, and I want to be alive to my single in the Pennsylvania Derby. So I did use her a little bit in this spot, but I would prefer to see It Is Well or Salty get home. Salty kind of getting back to the 1.16 miles, which I think is going to probably help her out a little bit. She was on Acorn Day, she was wide when Abel Tasman dipped down to the rail, and the CCA Oaks, she had that trouble at the beginning. The 1.25 miles in the Alabama, she just didn't really – she took a lot of dirt, didn't really run that well, going 1.25 miles, didn't run bad. She did run third. So I'm going to give her another shot kind of cutting back in this spot. And I think Tyler Gaffalione's been riding really well under the radar while most of the attention's been on the Ortiz brothers riding as well as they have. I think Tyler's got a good future ahead of him. So I don't know. This race is kind of the one that's the trickiest one. This is the one where I would encourage people, if you like something, include it here. But I'm going to try to get away with just using those 3.
And more or less equally, not pressing Abel Tasman because of the various reasons you said?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to press her. It's going to be more of a save if she wins. If she wins, then cool. I'm alive to my single in the Penn Derby, and there's an opportunity to make a couple dollars or at least get out.
I like it. You mentioned Jose Ortiz before. We should have mentioned that he was involved in that ugly-looking spill in the nightcap at Belmont the other day. I guess getting an MRI this weekend sounds very unlikely. He will be participating this weekend, but hopefully we'll get some good news and a clean bill of health, and we'll get him back in the iron sooner rather than later. All right, JK, you teased that you had a single in the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby. I'm sure many listeners are assuming that means you're going to be going to the old closet and getting out that white powdered wig, but I have a feeling you might be stealing the pick that I texted you about the other day. What is it?
Yeah, no, I love IRAP in this spot. I thought that the 1.25 miles might just be a touch too far for him. His last 2 1/8 races, I believe, win this situation. West Coast kind of had things his own way last time. And I think IRAP's going to be super tough in here. He's drawn right in the middle of the field. He should find the two path around there if he doesn't somehow find the rail in the pocket. He's got pace that he can sit behind, and I think he'll finish up strong. I think he's the most likely winner of this race, and what he'll probably be the second choice. I don't see how he could be bet more than West Coast. I'm looking forward to trying to be alive to him in the pick 3.
West Coast is worth pausing on. On one level, he's really put himself in a position to start to take control of this division. Were he to win here, I don't know that it would be enough to surpass Always Dreaming when it comes down to end of the year votes. Believe it or not, I still think in that environment, when people are sitting around in December and looking at starting to count grade 1 wins, Florida Derby and Kentucky Derby might look better at that point than Travers and Pennsylvania Derby. We'll have to see. But here's the real issue. West Coast deserves to be in this position. He's ran very well, but he has also run not just last time with conditions in his favor, but I kind of feel like the last 3 times with conditions in his favor. I still feel like there might be an element of dressed up here for West Coast. Not that he's a horse who needs to be on the lead as he was last time. That was a very canny ride from Mike Smith. I think he might be happy here to sit behind the likes of Timeline and Outplay, who I presume will be ahead of him early. But, we talked extensively about what we thought of the track Travers Day, and I feel like our consensus at the time was not ready to call this like a huge inside bias, but it was definitely a day where being on the inside meant something, and being on the outside, while not didn't sentence you to running poorly, I do believe that it was a lot of horses just didn't run well at all on the outside, and the horses who did were probably extra impressive. And I think looking back at the speed figures that the horses got that day bears that idea out. Now, we're really going to start to learn something about how that track was playing now when some of these horses are running back. But with that in mind, ERAP 4 wide on that track the whole way, only beaten 5.5 as opposed to West Coast, and what he was able to do. I think they're a lot closer in ability than that margin suggests. And from the first time I opened these PPs, I was interested in, how can we, who in England can we bother to get us the 6-1 available on ERAP, and or how do we get live to this thing in the multis? So yeah, I'm just basically, in a very long-winded way, seconding your emotion here. What do you think about the stuff I was saying about the Travers Day track? How important is that to your case, and what do you think it's going to end up that track was with a few weeks to have reflected on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's definitely, I would think that you didn't want to be outside on that day, and IRAP definitely was there. The other thing about him that I think is interesting to take into consideration, and why I thought the pick 3 would be the best play here, being a blind pool into this, and you can explain that. The blind pool meaning that if I'm playing the double, then you can look at the will pays to see what
who's getting bet in the next league.
Not the will pays, excuse me, the probables.
The probables
are who's getting bet. If you bet the pick 3, then it's a blind pool, and so I think that, I'm not a sheets guy or a rags guy or whatever. I don't even know the difference between the two of them, but I do know that they take into account ground loss and being wide on a track. And I would think that IRAP's going to be a sheet play in this situation. And so because of that, I think that they're going to be a lot closer in price than you would assume. I mean, I think he's going to go definitely in from 3-1. I think he'll be 5-2, if not 2-1. So I want to try to grab him in the pick 3 pool, where I think he'll resemble more of the 3 and 4-1 in that pick 3 pool.
I think that's well put, and I think that's a smart pool to attack for sure. We got time to talk about a couple of other races quickly. Did you have time? No, let's stay on Saturday, actually. You mentioned you're a big fan of the Kelso as a race in general. What did you think of this year's edition?
I think it's really interesting. I think all eyes are going to be on this race for a lot of different reasons. One being Jorge Navarro on the 5 horse with Sharp Azteca, who for a long time I've said is going to be our Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner. I thought he was going to win in Maidan and didn't get it done, but I think he's a serious racehorse. At the same time, I really want to bet Birdsong. We've talked about Birdsong being a horse that I think will appreciate one turn, and the 6 furlongs might have been a little bit too sharp for him last time. Maybe this is exactly what he wants. He's going to get pace because Sharp Azteca is going to go. And so I think that Birdsong is the type of horse I would play in a tournament setting at 12-1 on the morning line. And Sharp Azteca is the type of horse that I would put 80% of my play through in multi-race bets. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting, especially with all the attention that Jorge Navarro has been getting. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this race. It's a fun race and definitely a good lead into the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile.
Definitely a key prep for that. We don't have time to follow up on Navarro. Folks interested in our thoughts can check out. I guess that was the last show we did where we went. Last Friday we talked extensively about it. Little bit of disagreement there, but not really. I think we have similar fundamental points. So you can check that out if you're curious. No love for our old friend Divining Rod, JK.
Well, I thought he was okay. It's more. It's like like with you, like Uni last week. It's more or less love for another horse rather than dislike for that one. Yeah, I mean, I would never talk anyone off Divining Rod. I just think Sharp Azteca is serious, and if he doesn't get it done, I couldn't see myself playing anyone but Birdsong.
Uni being the one you love there, and View Fantastique, the horse that I had mentioned to you, and you couldn't come up with any affection because you correctly somehow knew Uni was going to run like she was shot out of a cannon that last eighth and get up in a spot that looked absolutely impossible. Let's talk about one more race. And let's have that go to Sunday and be the Oklahoma Derby. We have 3 horses in here returning from the Kentucky Derby, which is big news down at Remington to have 3 Derby horses in their Derby. Folks really interested in Remington and all the stakes races on the card can go check out drf.com/YouTube. Last night I did a handicapping session with Craig Milkowski, Chris Katulak, and Mary Rampolini, where those experts gave their thoughts on all of the stakes happening. But I'd love to get your quick thoughts, Jonathan, on the Oklahoma Derby.
Well, being a graduate of the University of Texas, I typically don't support anything with the word Oklahoma in it.
That's why you weren't on the webinar last night? You
yeah,
were pissed?
Exactly.
We're holding out for Lone Star?
Exactly.
The Maynard Downs handicapping session?
Exactly. Gervin's going to have to prove it to me. I mean, obviously he did in the Haskell, but was pretty bad last time. So he's going to have to kind of earn my trust back. I'm really interested in Battle of Midway. That horse seems to be progressive, going in the right direction. The extra eighth of a mile based off of his last race should be just fine for him. Flavian Pratt I would imagine has never ridden there. I'm not 100% sure. I don't have those PPs in front of me, but Battle of Midway for me, there's no morning lineup yet, so I'm not really sure. I would imagine he'll probably be the second choice, if not the favorite. Maybe Gervin, people kind of fall off of Gervin a little bit, but Battle of Midway for me in that spot.
He's got to be the favorite, Battle of Midway. I think third in the Kentucky Derby, coming off a 6-length win and 101 speed figure in the shared belief. I got to figure the crowd is going to come for him. You're on team Battle of Midway. WinStar's just hired you as a consultant, JK. What's the plan from here for Battle of Midway, assuming he runs well? Are you thinking of getting super ambitious and classic? Or are you thinking Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile?
I mean, I guess it depends. I would think classic. These big operations like WinStar. Not that the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is some second-tier race, but they're stallion builders. They're looking to build stallions.
The Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is a second-tier race.
Well, you know what I mean. But it is to the classic, but it's not like a bad race to win.
No. Yes, I agree with that.
But Liam's map went in that race a couple years ago, and I thought he would have tried the classic. So who knows? I would guess classic if he runs well. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm going to think he'd fit a lot better in the other race, but I understand there's other conditions that are in effect here that people have to pay attention to. But it's going to be a fun race, and it's a bunch of fun races at Remington on Sunday. I definitely encourage folks to check it out and check out that handicapping session as well. JK, we are out of time, my friend. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I want to thank you very much for your time on today's show. I want to encourage everybody to look at tournaments.drf.com. A lot of cool stuff coming up, and I really want podcast fans to play in this tournament. It'll make us look good and make us very happy if we can draw an impressive number of people in this contest that's coming up next Friday, opening day of Santa Anita, last chance qualifier for last chance feeder for the last chance qualifier for the Santa Anita Autumn Contest. Takes place, of course, on October 7th and 8th, the contest itself. And I'm not going to make it out there this time, unfortunately, but I will be following with great interest from afar. Most of all, I want to thank everybody else for tuning in and all the support, especially our man with the betting proposal question. Fantastic stuff there. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.